Tonight's shir is l'schos refuah shaleva Reuven ben Edo. In the previous shir, we spoke about the halachas that are negeya to waiting when one eats Fleishigs and then one wants to eat Milchigs, the halachas of waiting. In today's shir, we're going to speak about the other way around. If somebody ate Milchigs and then he wants to go and eat Fleishigs, what are the halachas? Siman Pei Tes Sif Beis. The Shulchan Aruch says that after somebody eats Milchigs, there are 3 requirements to be able to go and eat Fleishigs. Number 1, to make sure that your hands are clean, that there's no milchige residue, there's no cheese left on your hand. Obviously, if there's cheese left on your hand and then you're going to go eat Fleishigs, so even if you take care of everything, there's still cheese that's going to go onto the Fleishigs. So therefore, one has to make sure that his hands are clean. The second requirement is kinuach, to make sure to rinse your mouth, not to rinse it, to clean it by eating something, either eating bread, to eat crackers. And then there's a third requirement of hadacha, to rinse your mouth with liquid. Make sure your hands are clean. Clean your mouth by kinuach with crackers, bread, and hadacha with rinsing your mouth. You need both. And we're going to go through each one of them more be'iyun, but you need both. Well asked, you need both. You need to make sure your hands are clean. You need to clean your mouth 2 ways. Firstly, by eating something that takes out the cheese and the dairy products that are in your mouth. And you also have to rinse your mouth with a fluid, with a liquid. The first requirement is to make sure your hands are clean, which the Shulchan Aruch says you just have to check your hands to make sure that there's no dairy, there's no milchigs on your hand. L'maisa, if it's by night, Zok the Shulchan Aruch, balayla you have to wash your hands. By night that you can't see, it's dark, so you have to wash your hands. Zok the Shach says that l'maisa one should be machmer and always wash. You should always wash your hands, even by day. Reading some of the Torah from others, and he says v'chei noyegim, that you should always wash your hands. Why should you wash your hands? L'chayra, like the Shulchan Aruch says, if you check your hands and you make sure there is no milchigs on your hands, so why do you have to wash your hands as well? The teretz is because sometimes these milchigs on it, v'la v'adaite, you don't realize shamnunis, these like fat from the cheese. If these pieces are cheese, so you look at your hand and you see there's no milchigs on it, and you're good. But sometimes it's not the cheese itself, but it's actually the fat of the cheese, and you're not going to realize it. Therefore, you should always wash your hands. L'chayru, what should come out? No. Unless it's dirty and when you wash your hands it didn't come off, then you have to wash stuff because you have to remove it. What's about Rafi this, that the reason why one has to wash their hands is because when you eat the cheese, even if there's no pieces of cheese, these lachluches, the shamnunis of the cheese, what's about if somebody's drinking milk, drinking a coffee? You drink a coffee, and then afterwards you want to go and eat Fleishigs. It's very common. You're going into supper, but l'maisa you're very tired, so you want to still hop around the coffee. You have the coffee, and then you want to go eat supper. If the reason why you have to wash your hands is because lava daite, which means these pieces of cheese or the shamnunis of the cheese is on your hand, what should come out is when you drink a coffee, you shouldn't have to. You should not have to wash your hands. L'maisa in Isser v'heter, the Isser v'heter says that even if you drink a coffee, a coffee with milk inside, or you drink milk, you should still wash your hands. And the reason for that, why do you have to wash your hands? The Bada Shulchan says 2 reasons. First of all, loy plug, which means once one of the requirements before eating Fleishigs, after Milchigs, is one of them is to rinse, to clean your hands. So you can't tell me only in such a type of cheese and not such a type of milchigs. Therefore, always the halacha is when you eat milchigs, you have to, after the milchigs, you have to wash your hands. Even though technically, when you're drinking your coffee, it's not applicable. You don't have to. You shouldn't have to wash your hands. Still, out slay plug, you have to wash your hands. Another reason is brought in the Bada Shulchan that just like you always have to wash your hands, the Shach says is because sometimes these leftover residue, these leftover shamnunis of the cheese on your hand, sometimes it could be on the back, on the side of the cup. It shakes a little bit, some coffee, some milk is on the back of the cup, which is taka shriach, and therefore that goes on your hand, and therefore you don't realize, so you should always wash your hands. What's about if you eat with a fork? That's what you're going to ask. You eat with a fork. And when you eat with a fork, you're not touching the food. Does a person have to do this first requirement of making sure you're washing your hands? What the Shach says. So there's a list of poskim that say you do not. You do not have to wash your hands. Let's see in a minute. Let's see if it's taka applicable. Good point. What you're saying. We'll get right back to 1 minute.
Use your fingers also nicer.
You touch the food.
No one needs a napkin. No one needs a napkin.
So we'll give you a second to this svara. The ones that say that you do not have to is just the Pri Chadash. The Rashash brings it. The Be'er Heitif. The Aruch HaShulchan. You don't have to. Mi'idach, and also the Pri Toyer. The Pri Toyer, the Hachaim says that Lagabi fish and meat, which the halacha is Dvar Masur Mishum Sakana and Siman Kuf Tezayin. After eating fish, you're supposed to do the same thing. Wash your hands. Kinuach v'hadacha. Says the Pri Toyer over there in Hilchas Dvar Masur Mishum Sakana. Between fish and meat, you're supposed to wash your hands as well. But if you eat the fish with a fork, you don't have to wash your hands. So we have a list of poskim that say that if you eat with a fork, you do not have to wash your hands. Now, mi'idach, in Shirei Bracha de Chida, says that you, even with a fork, you do have to wash your hands. And the Olam is saying a good svara of Rama. You were mentioning, we'll see in a second why it's a kal v'chaymer. I thought maybe it's not, it's a bigger chiddush, but at least the concept is mavur. First of all, we said before, loy plug. So you have the same loy plug. Once you have to wash your hands, you have to wash it across the board, even if you eat with a fork. But v'oid, the same reason why v'lav adaitei, like we saw before, when you're drinking a cup of coffee, it could be it's spilled out on the side. So I guess when you're eating with a fork, v'lav adaitei, you're saying maybe even when you eat with a fork, sometimes you don't realize that you eat with your hands. Also, lav adaitei, or even with eating with a fork, sometimes a piece gets onto your hand. But I'll call upon we have a machloikis. Even though these din in Shulchan Aruch, from Milchigs to Fleishigs, you're supposed to wash your hands, or the Shulchan Aruch says to make sure it's clean, the Shach says to wash it, but we have a machlokes when it comes when you eat with a fork. What were you saying? You're saying that it's even a kal v'chaymer?
Yeah, I think it's more likely that your hand gets dirty, like he was saying, when you're eating with a fork.
Because sometimes you eat, because you end up...
Most times with the coffee, it doesn't actually get dirty. Sometimes it does. So if you're eating with a fork, that's why you need a napkin. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's more likely, that's all. You can see it.
Leg plug is not so precious, because by a fork is different. When you eat your hands, it's a leg plug. Could be a fork, it's a whole different kind of thing. Could be if you're not touching the food with your hands, then could be a whole different soup.
Here, Rabbi Avram's bringing up, you have to know Hilchas loy plug. Obviously, you don't say loy plug from one din to the next din that doesn't have shaychus. So technically over here it has shaychus. It's not only has shaychus, it's the din that after eating milchigs to fleishigs, you have to wash your hands or make sure your hands are clean. You're saying that it's not just a din from milchigs to fleishigs. You're saying from milchigs in a way that your hands get dirty. If you eat it with a fork, there's no shaychus. He's saying just like if somebody would eat with IV, so you don't have to clean the mouth. You don't say loy plug l'cha'ira because there's no shaychus. I'm bringing it for a marshal. I mean, if somebody has to eat with IVs, maybe a chayla, it's a different din. But the concept, I hear you're saying maybe loy plug is a shayli, being miyash of the poskim that say if you eat with a fork, you don't have to. Let's move in now to the next two requirements that the Shulchan Aruch says kinuach v'hadacha. We spoke about the hands have to be clean. What's about kinuach v'hadacha? To rinse out, to clean your mouth with food as well as with liquid. So you asked before, Reb Shmuel, you asked before if you need both. So the Shulchan Aruch says both, you need both. Does the order make a difference? To eat and then to drink, or to drink and then to eat? It happens all the time. If when a person is eating milchigs and then he wants to move on from a milchig a kiddush, so sometimes you take a drink afterwards and then you wash, you have challah, and the question is if you could go right into the Fleishigs, or do you have to do kinuach first, the eating, and then afterwards the hadacha? The shach says the seder is not ma'akiv. That's the shach, right here on local, the shach says the seder is not ma'akiv. I just want to point out and share with the Olam that the Darkei Tshuva brings those that say that the Seder is Ma'akiv. But you see from there the Svara, he says, why is the Seder Ma'akiv? And you see the Svara, why we need Kinuach and Adacha. Why do you need it? He says, Kinuach, when you eat the bread, the crackers, or whatever you eat, as long as it's not the items in the Shulchan Aruch that you can't, if you eat those Maichalim, it takes out the cheese and the milchig, the residue, what's left over in your mouth, and it more or less takes it out. But Lamaisa, these crumbs floating around, so for that, afterwards, you have the liquid, the mouthwash, and it cleans out the remainder crumbs that are left over. But often, that would be a reason why you should need kinuach and then adacha, because first you take out the main dairy products that are floating around, then you have the liquid to take it out. But Lamaisa, the Shach says that the Seder is not ma'akiv. I got this question today, what's about using a toothbrush? Which means, instead of kinuach v'adach is obviously to get the milchigs out of your mouth, could you use a toothbrush? The Taz right here, when the Taz speaks about Gevina Kasha, which we'll get to, the Taz goes back into any, from milchigs to Fleishigs, and the Taz says, Oy chema ein lahachmer yoyse mi kinuach, v'nikur shinayim, and hadacha. V'nikur shinayim, to clean your teeth. The poskim today speak about it. If it helps or it doesn't help. So what we have so far is there's a din of making sure your hands are clean. The Shach says you have to actually wash your hands. Then there's a din of kinuach v'hadacha, to rinse your mouth with food and with liquid. The same din of kinuach v'hadacha is negeya also by fish and meat. These are Shulchan Aruch, a siman, by Hilchas Suda, siman Kufa and Gimel din Mayim Tzoyim, which is talking about between eating fish and meat, and the Shulchan Aruch says Meshum Sakana, we don't eat it together. So over there also is the same din, to wash your hands, make sure your hands are clean, kinuach v'hadacha.
How long after eating milk do you get to master? How long after eating milk do you need to do all three?
We're going to get to that, because Mordechai, what you're asking is for how long afterwards, which means does a waiting period help? So we have to see Bechlal. Well, let's first see Bechlal about waiting, if there's such a concept. In Shulchan Aruch so far, these three requirements. Doesn't say anything about waiting. Kinuach v'hadacha, could you do it together? And this is very common also. Let's say you had a coffee if you need it. Could be a coffee you don't need, but let's say you had a cheese Danish. Then you're going into your supper, and the supper starts with a fruit cup. So a fruit cup would be a regular good case of kinuach v'hadacha together. Fruit is something that you could use for kinuach, and then you have the liquid. Could you do it together? The Levush says the lashon of Yoser Toiv, it's better not to do it together. The same is also the Pri Megadim, better not to do it together. The Aruch HaShulchan is actually mesupik if you could do it together.
Doesn't the Aruch HaShulchan say that if you have Fleishigs Suda, anyway, that the whole Suda is like, you can't start Fleishigs Suda if you're just going out from Milchigs. So the whole Trefze is, Ashtik Trefze Fleishig, you're then happy to do Kino Hadacha in a food cup.
So here's the thing. Yaakov Akiva? What? Akiva wants to know, what are we clearing over here about having a fruit cup? But Maisa, you have to have a different Suda. So I'll answer you now, and we're going to speak about it soon also. So you made it a different Suda. You had your cheese Danish, you made a la mechia, and you want to have a fruit cup, and then you want to go to your steak.
Let's say you're washing. Let's say you wash for a Fleishig Suda.
Yeah.
Use that for kinuach. Use that for kinuach.
Okay, so that you have the kinuach, but Lamaisa, the hadacha was together with the kinuach. Good, interesting point. You're saying if you washed, you have bread, and then you're having a fruit cup. But the liquid, if you need liquid separately, you don't have it separately.
No, but he's asking Stop. If you're washing, then the kinuach of the chal of the bread is for Fleishig Suda, which is it's part of the Fleishig Suda. So how can you use that as
The whole Aruch HaShulchan is talking only about from Basar to Sudas Basar to Sudas Cholov. Here you're talking about Fakir. So who says you can't have it in the same? Finish your
We're gonna get back to it. Good point. We're gonna get back to it. From Milchigs to Fleishigs, it has to be in the same Suda. Let's get back to it. Let's stay here. Ba'oifim Suda. So far we covered clearly. Oh, 1 second. So the Aruch HaShulchan says he's mesupik. It's just interesting to note that the same we said kinuach v'adach is also negeya by a Suda from. You eat the Suda from fish to meat, and people do kinuach v'adacha. There are those that when they make the Hachaim, they put their challah into the schnapps. For one reason is because he's a shaila about the bracha, if it's bar masuda. But v'oid, they also to have kinuach v'hadacha. If you just make a Hachaim, you only have hadacha. But that would be a case of kinuach v'hadacha together. So we have over here so far that when one wants to eat Fleishigs after Milchigs, to make sure your hands are clean, it could be even to wash them. We also see you have to do kinuach v'hadacha to eat something and to drink something to clean out your mouth. There is no mention in the Shulchan Aruch about waiting. The Ramah brings that some are machmer by Milchigs as of by Fleishigs to wait the full waiting. And that we're not machma like that. But by cheese, gevina kasha, over there, the Ramah says yes to wait. By gevina kasha, again, before gevina kasha, any dairy, you don't have to wait. You have to make sure your hands are clean, kinuach v'hadacha. However, says the Ramah, when it comes to gevina kasha, you have to wait. The Shach brings the marshal that goes pretty strong against it, the waiting even by gevina kasha. It's even minus because the Gemara says you don't have to wait, only by Fleishigs. Lamaisa the Shach says yes to be machmer to wait by Gevina Kasha, and that's taka the minhag. Chachmas Adam brings the halacha to wait taka, to wait. How long do you wait? Says the Taz, 6 hours. Like we know, we call it 6-hour cheeses. But it's important to know and to understand that the waiting by Gevina Kasha is a wait as if you wait from Fleishigs to Milchigs. If you wait from Fleishigs to Milchigs 5 hours, or 5, we mentioned last year 5:31, the sheet of Rabbi, and you wait different shurim. The Bnei Ashkenaz, the Yekis, they wait 3 hours. Whatever you wait from Fleishigs to Milchigs, that's what you would wait from Milchigs, Gevina Kasha, which we'll see in a minute what Gevina Kasha is. You wait from there going into the other way around, going into Fleishigs. What is Gevina Kasha? What is Gevina Kasha? So these are machloikas apoiskim right here on the Amud in Shulchan Aruch, machloikas Shach and Taz. The Shach says Gevina Kasha is something that's aged right around 6 months. He says if it's 6 months, you could assume it could be its Kasha, the Lashon HaShach, which means about 6 months. U'min astam miyashana vav chadashim, it's Kasha. That's the Shach. 6 months, Gevina Kasha means the cheese was aged for 6 months. And there's a big discussion in the Poskim. What makes it age 6 months? Does it have to be in the place where they make the cheese? Does it have to be there for 6 months? Or once it comes onto your plate, that's also, if it's 6 months, then you have to already wait you have to wait whatever the waiting period is. A lot of poskim say that only if it's 6 months in the place where they make the cheese, only over there do you have to wait 6 hours. Why? Because when it's made over there, it's in a controlled environment, and once it goes onto the shelf in the store, they package it in a way that it doesn't change anymore. It doesn't age. Why? Because imagine there's a certain cheese you like, and every time you buy it, it tastes differently. Because if it was on the shelf in the store for 1 month, it tastes like this. 2 months, they have to control the taste, and therefore when they package it, they package it in a way that it doesn't age anymore. That's one side. Others say, no, that Lamaisa, if it's 6 months, that's called Gavina Kasha. There are cheese companies that actually put a date on it. They put an expiration date 6 months from when they made it, which means you could see it, and that's when it's, after that, it's considered Gavina Kasha to wait 6 hours. That's the Shitas HaShach. The Shach holds that you wait 6 hours on cheeses that were around for 6 months. Just interesting, I heard today somebody told me the Ben Ish Chai says if the cheese aged for 1 month, you wait 1 hour, 2 months, 2 hours, up to 6 months, 6 hours, and that's it. After that, you don't have to wait longer. But that's the Shitas HaShach. 6 hours, you wait. For 6 months of aging of the cheese, you wait 6 hours. The Taz argues, and the Taz says, no, it has nothing to do with how old the cheese is. It could be 1 month, it could be 10 months. It's not relevant. If it's kosher, which means it has a very strong taste, if it has a very strong taste, like Rabbi Gordimer when he said from the OU, a pungent taste, it has a very strong, cheesy taste, then you have to wait 6 hours. It doesn't make a difference if the cheese is even 1 month. Today they can make cheeses, very strong cheeses, make it very quickly. They put in enzymes and they control it, and they make it it tastes like very, very heavy and very strong. Says the Taz, you have to wait 6 hours. So we have a machlokes Taz and Shach. The Taz says 6 months. If it's not 6 months, it doesn't make a difference. Even if it's strong, you don't have to wait. The Taz says the opposite. Strong, you have to wait, even if it's not 6 months. And if it's 6 months, it doesn't make a difference. Even if it's not strong, you don't have to wait. L'maaseh Aruch HaShulchan says to be machmer like either or, which means whether if it aged for 6 months, you should wait 6 hours, or 5 hours, 5.5 hours. And the same thing is also if it didn't age for 6 months, but if it's a very strong cheese, like the Taz calls it mitulas, it's wormy, these worms in it, that's how strong the cheese is, you have to wait 6 hours. There's a big nidun in the Poiskin about Gevina Tzahava. You buy Tenuva, you lived in Eretz Yisrael, Gevina Tzahava, yellow cheese. Over here, mozzarella cheese. Rabbi Yashiv held that on mozzarella cheese, you're supposed to wait 6 hours. The Geya for pizza, that's a discussion for itself. Just to bring about it, we're discussing waiting 6 hours, 5 hours on Gevina Kasha. There's the kula of the Yad Yehuda, which the Yad Yehuda says that if you cook up the cheese, then you don't have to wait, which would be Parmesan cheese. You have a soup, an onion soup, and you go a lot of times to a place where they have a shaker of Parmesan cheese. You pour it into your soup, so it gets mixed into the soup. Says the Yad Yehuda, then it loses its status of Gevina Kasha, and you don't have to wait.
Even the cliche, it has to be cooked.
L'chayra, it's not like a din bishul. Let's see, these 3 ways how to understand. 2 ways plus even another additional kula. Some say it has to dissolve into the food, which means eggplant parmesan, it's actually made from other cheese, but on top they also they sprinkle on Parmesan cheese. There it's be'en. Over there you don't have the kula. Only when it's dissolved in the food, you mix it in your soup, you pour it into your soup and you don't see it, it's to give flavor. Over there you don't have to wait, which l'cha'ira, even if the soup is a kli sheni, a kli shlishi, l'maisa, if it's dissolved, you don't have to wait. And l'chayra, even if you learn the other way around, if it's cooked, if it's soft, l'chayra vayta, you shouldn't have to wait. But it's a good shaila. If it's a kli sheni, what would be the halacha? If you still have to, is it poigim? It's din gevina kasha. There are some that even take this Yad Yehuda another step. That even if it gets back hard, you still don't have to wait. Even if it gets back hard, you still don't have to wait. It loses its din gevina kasha. L'maisa lahalacha, one should consult with his rav what to do about using this kula. There's another interesting kula that I saw in the Madani HaShulchan. I don't remember if you bring it. You bring the Madani HaShulchan says that you could be makel if Friday afternoon somebody ate. He didn't realize he ate a cheese that's a 6-hour cheese. And then it comes Friday night, you're making Kiddush and you want to eat the Suda. So he says, Oynik Shabbos, a whole shtickle Torah, but he says, Atzad Lahakal. Again, one should ask the Rav before relying on it, but that's at least he brings such a concept of Makam Lahakal. No, I definitely didn't say you have to wait after pizza. But what I did say is that Rabbi Yashiv held that you have to wait. But are cooked. But I heard that Rabbi Yashiv used, if you're bringing up already the cooked, very good point. If you're bringing it up, I heard that Rabbi Yashiv used that b'tziruf if somebody also napped, which we spoke about in last year, waiting from Fleishigs to Milchigs. There was a tzad to be shorten the hours when you sleep. Lamaisa, we don't rely on that. Some Seifa wanted to use that kula, we don't rely on that. But Lamaisa, Rabbi Yashiv used that b'tziruf, pizza, with the Yad Yehuda that it's cooked. And if a person naps, then you can cut it down to 3 hours. But this, I brought up the Gevina Tzahava, the pizza, 10 L'chacham v'Yosef Lekach. There's a lot written about it, a lot to speak about it. But we can't just speak about Gevina Kosher and not mention that these shitas that hold that even pizza, these should be a tzad that you have to wait.
What should we do? I'm asking that local Flash Rabbi. What should we do with Monsey?
We'll speak about it afterwards. There was a shir here Tuesday, a legal holiday shir on Choshe Mishpat. So many people were asking shilas, real complicated shilas. And the one that was here, he's a dying in Choshe Mishpat. Rabbi Kani gave a shir once. So some shilas, he said, I'll answer afterwards. I'm not saying this is a complicated shilas, we'll speak about it afterwards. So we spoke so far that there's a din to rinse your hands, there's a din of kinuach v'hadacha, and by aged cheeses you have to wait 6 hours. So far we haven't seen anything about waiting. What's about waiting? Is there a din to wait between Milchigs and Fleishigs? The shla, these minhagim by many, that wait from Milchigs to Fleishigs a full an hour. It's the shla says it. The shla says in Hilchos Shavuos, and the Shach makes a mention of it in Sivkat Tezayin. The Aruch HaShulchan brings it, and the Makoyer is a Zoyer. Actually, the Goyen brings it over here as well. Here in the Milchig part, the Zoyer says that a person that does not wait, he's talking about Fleishigs to Milchigs, Milchigs to Fleishig. A person doesn't wait Chodesh to 1 hour. A picture of a Gedi shows up on his forehead. We mentioned the last time also. Person that does not wait an hour. So the Zoyer says waiting an hour, whether from Milchigs to Fleishigs or Fleishigs to Milchigs, waiting an hour. That's the Makor, waiting an hour. The Kitzer says, Lamaisa, you don't have to. Interesting, the Hachaim says Yirei Shemayim should wait, but that's the Makor for those that are noyik to wait an hour, to have that minhag. The Makor is a shalom. Api a Zoyer. There are those many that have the minhag to wait a half hour. Wait a half hour. L'maisa, the half hour doesn't really have a makor. It has a very strong makor. That's a minhag by a lot of people in Klal Yisrael. Where does a half hour come from? So, from where? So I'm going to say over what the Heintige Gedoyle Apoiskim, Gedoyle Achroinim say how to work out a half hour. Rav Vosner says, it's a minhag. Minhag by Klal Yisrael a half hour. Where does the minhag come from? So he says, just like you find la yeshav lefnei asaper samach lemincha up until a half hour before mincha. Why? Because within a half hour it's called samach. So mamela, you're not supposed to eat milchigs and fleishigs together. Samach, therefore a half hour. These other svaras, the Mishkanis Yaakov says that just like you find that you make psharas, even over here, some wait only 3 hours, and even by fleishigs. Anyways, let's say if you have to wait 6 hours, you only wait 3 hours. So a pshara by Milchigs from the Zoyer to wait an hour or not to wait, so the pshara is a half hour. Others say that a half hour, the makar is a half hour. It's not really a half hour, it's 31 minutes. Because if you have roiv of an hour, then you have an hour already. So that's different hesberim and a half hour. Again, the Shulchan Aruch says you need to rinse your hands, clean, rinse it. Kinuach v'hadacha. By 6 hour cheeses, the Ramah says to wait. However, you wait from Fleishigs to Milchigs. And then we see over here that the waiting period of an hour and a half hour is a minhag. Even if you do wait, I'm sorry, just another 2 minutes. There's a makam lahakol, even if you wait, this minhag of waiting a half hour, waiting an hour, the Pri Megadim says that Shavuos, you don't have to wait. Even if you wait an hour, even if you wait a half hour, Shavuos, you can be mekel and you don't have to wait. Another makam lahakol, interesting, and this is very important, is lagabe coffee. We saw in the Rashash, I'm going to just take out the point of it. The Rashash says a concept that what we had already before, we might get to it again. The Rashash says that liquid just goes into your mouth and it dissolves right away. He even gets more makel, we'll see in other cases. But anyways, lagabe waiting, just like lagabe kinuach v'adacha, lagabe waiting, one would not have to wait. So this is another makam lahakol. If someone had the question before, let's say Yataka waited a half hour, you were machmer, you waited a half hour, an hour, do you still have to do kinuach v'hadacha? So the Shla says, over there in the Shla, and it's the same thing as the Pri Megadim as well, they say that makol makoim, you still have to do kinuach v'hadacha. The waiting is just a chumrah to wait a half hour, but you don't become part from the ikra adin of kinuach v'hadacha. What did you say? That's a good shaila. We'll discuss afterwards. No, there's a discussion about it. Up until how long, because it's negay for Fleishigs. Also, I'll show you. One more nekuda. We spoke about waiting, not waiting. Waiting is a minhag, what you have to do. What's about, does it have to be in a different suda? Which means you had a kiddush Shavuos morning, and then after the kiddush, you want to go right into your suda, which means do you have to bench? Or we saw another suda is not even benching, a bracha achroina. The Magen Avram in Hilchas Shavuos by the Kiddush of Shavuos, and the Mishnah Berurah brings a halacha, says that one does not have to make a bracha achroina. You don't have to make it another suda. From Fleishigs to Milchigs, you have to make it another suda. From Milchigs to Fleishigs, you do not have to make it another suda. However, there are those that are chaylik. Already the Beis Yosef argues, and the Beis Yosef, this is back in Hilchas, where we saw Hilchas Beinam, the Hilchas Suda, the Beis Yosef says that if you take a look in the Zohar says just like you have to wait Chodesh Shaita, the Zohar says also you can't eat it in the same Suda. And the Zohar speaking Milchigs to Fleishigs, Fleishigs to Milchigs, which the din is that you can't eat Milchigs and Fleishigs in the same Suda regardless of the order, and therefore you would have to make the bracha achroina. So just to sum up what we had over here, Medina, the Shulchan Aruch, one has to make sure his hands are clean. One has to do kinuach v'hadacha. 6 hour cheeses is a chumrah that the Ramah says to do, and v'chei noyagim. We saw there are minhagim lagabi waiting as well, but waiting as well doesn't make it more kal lagabi kinuach v'hadacha. And then we saw one last question of requirement from milchigs to fleishigs, and that's been a geya if it has to be a different suda. We saw it's a machlokes.